Hi, my name's Kevin Wernett. I'm the Executive Director here at Woldumar Nature Center. Here at Woldumar, we like to say that Woldumar is more than a park. It's a cause and it's a community. So we're going to start a new series of videos for our YouTube channel where I sit down with interesting people who are part of our community and just have a little conversation so we can all get to know each other a little bit better. Today, I'm sitting down with a dear friend to Woldumar and a dear friend to me personally. I'm here with Margaret Hotlschlag. Margaret is the director of the Big Lesson programs throughout the state, and specifically Annie's Big Nature Lesson, which is a huge part of our mission fulfillment here at Woldumar. But I'm going to let Margaret tell you a little bit about Annie's Big Nature Lesson. Welcome, Margaret.
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. And thank you for considering me one of those interesting people. I love that. I truly do love Woldumar and all that we get to do here. Annie's Big Nature Lesson is the work I get to do. We have classes coming from 11 different school districts in this mid-Michigan area just for this going on here. And this year I think there's 54 classes that will be doing it. And this is our 20th year. Not counting the year of COVID, but of doing Annie's Big Nature Lesson.
Let's kind of start at the beginning. So Annie's Big Nature Lesson is just one of the big lessons. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us what the other big lessons are and maybe kind of how it all started?
Sure. It all started when I was a 4th grade teacher in Hazlitt and taking my students on that traditional field trip that for me wasn't really maximizing the amazing things that our community had to offer. So I had taken my students on a field trip to the Michigan Historical Museum, and after I did that, I called the museum back and said, could I bring my students back again? I want to really immerse them in Michigan history. Then I went from there to the zoo. I figured if it works for history, it's going to work with animals.
Sure.
So Big Zoo Lesson started in 2000, and soon after that, I was contacted by some folks who knew that work that I was doing and wanted to see if I could develop a big lesson, well, for this one, in honor of their daughter, Ann Mason. And so Jerry and Betty Mason contacted me to see if we could make that happen, and then we started Annie's Big Nature Lesson in honor of their daughter, Ann.
That's great.
And there have been other big lessons that continue. Big Science Lesson at Impression 5, Big Earth Science Lesson, Big History Lesson up at Calumet in, I pointed the wrong direction, up in the UP.
It's not up in the sky.
Yeah, really, I know. Yeah, so there have been those kind of big lessons going on.
That's awesome. So what's big about the Big Lesson? How is the Big Lesson different than your typical field trip?
In this one, it's a study trip, or as you call it here at Woldumar, the field study.
Yeah.
The teacher is the designer of what happens for the whole week. They get the expert help of the naturalists that are working here, and the naturalists and the teachers and the ABNL folks like me help to design what that whole week is going to be. The naturalists are teaching here. The teachers are also teaching here. In the midst of all of this, there's a full hour every day for observation. So the children are writing in their journals and drawing and sketching and sometimes just pondering nature. And they're sitting in a different habitat each day. So one day they might be at the river, another day at the pond, another day in that beautiful forest that's here, another day in the meadow. And with all of that, the teacher connects all of this to their curriculum so that this is not a week away from or out of school. This is really a week that is immersed in their curriculum, but really immersed in the real world, the natural world.
Sure. So they're taking the learning that happens at school and applying it in a real world situation, right?
Yes.
And kind of building on what happens in the classroom out in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for instance, the teachers that are here this week they have as part of their science curriculum all about plants and another part of their science curriculum about animals and the different classifications of animals. It's just a for instance, but they're folding that into their lessons for this week as well.
That's great.
And it's happening at, I mean, we have 10 sites right now for Annie's Big Nature Lesson, and that same model is happening at each of those sites.
Sure. And when you talk about doing an hour of observations, is that consistent then through the history lesson and the science lesson, and they do the same kind of thing in the museum and the zoo?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yep. It's animal observation time at the zoo. It's gallery time for the big history lesson. Yes, and it's experiment time for big science lesson. But that same hour of, it's student driven, it's independent research, independent study by the student, but guided by the teacher to make that happen.
That's awesome. You know, I think a lot of people would hear that and their first question would be, how do you get first and second graders to sit still on a stool in the woods for 60 minutes at a time?
Yes.
Is there a secret recipe here, or?
Why, yes. I mean, we're following the way that children really learn, the way that children really think. And teachers might come at this in the very beginning of saying, oh, my kids couldn't do this. But then when they actually bring their students out to the edge of the meadow or to in the woods and help their students understand this is what we're going to have. An hour of silence, an hour of writing and drawing, and help their students realize that it really does evolve as the week goes on, so that by the middle of the week, children are completely immersed in that. And by the end of the week, they're saying, this is my favorite part of ABNL. When kids have time to make sense of the learning that they're getting with their naturalist or with their teachers, and in the other big lessons as well, that hour-long study time helps children really make sense of things. Yeah. One teacher described it to me once as being really moving things from kind of a two-dimensional level to a three-dimensional, giving the children a chance to learn all kinds of content and all kinds of, the wonders of nature at this place. Sure. And then in the observation time, the children really are internalizing what they've been learning and making sense of all that.
That's fascinating. One of our mottos as an organization is that Woldumar is for the naturally curious, and I think that kind of goes right along with what you're talking about.
Yes.
You know, sitting on a bench on the edge of the prairie or on the edge of the pine forest, there's a lot going on. You know, it's not a stagnant situation. There's always something to pay attention to, and one of our styles of teaching is simply inquiry-based learning. You know, you go out into nature and you can't help but ask questions. I think that really lends itself to what you're talking about, sitting with a journal and just taking note of what's happening out there.
Yeah.
So that's great.
You know, I'm glad you brought up that idea about the inquiry-based learning that we're doing, because the whole thing about inquiry is really essential for really making sense of this world. We do teacher training with the teachers before they experience this big lesson, and that teacher training goes on for all of the big lessons as well. It's a very interactive kind of professional development for teachers, because the teachers experience exactly what they're going to be doing with their students at that site. And sometimes it's very simple techniques that we'll teach, and sometimes the teachers then take that to much deeper levels with that. So a little example of that. For these two teachers that are here this week, this is their first time for ever doing Annie's Big Nature Lesson. One of the techniques that we taught in the teacher training was just these 3 simple sentences. Oh, I'm observing this. I see this. Oh, I wonder this about what I'm observing. I wonder. And the third one is this reminds me of.
So relating it back to something that they've previously experienced.
Yes,
sure.
Connecting it to their own personal life.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference with kids.
So we've got museum, science, zoo, nature here. If you were going to, at this point, come up with another big lesson? Is there another idea in there? Is there something else you think that students could be immersed in for an entire week?
Oh, absolutely.
What would it be?
Kevin, take a look in your neighborhood, and what are those wonderful, unique things that are in your neighborhood that you want to have children just immersed in and know about and take a part of? Or what are those questions that we have that we want children to explore? Where does our food come from? And how is food produced? And which foods are really good for you? And food. So the big farm lesson.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be an awesome one?
Amazing.
And with something as connected to the children as food. Learning in a setting of like big farm lesson would be, I think, just an awesome thing for children to know, that about all the different occupations that are part of what makes that happen. Who are these people in our community who are doing things that make these things happen? Wouldn't it be interesting to have the big civics lesson and have children really study how does our community really work? Gosh, the big watershed lesson. Where does the water go? How does it affect our land? Gosh, I mean, just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you have a whole list of great ideas that we could explore.
All of this idea where teachers are teaching in their community, and the community is inviting our teachers to come and learn in the community. It's a wonderful school-community partnership that's going on. It's going on with schools and museums, schools and zoos. It's schools and nature centers. And that kind of school partnership, I think, is really essential for our teachers to be a part of all of that, the parents to be all a part of that. And I think it's really essential for our children. They are our future leaders in our communities. They are the stewards of our communities now, and they are the future stewards of our communities. And if we are teaching out in the community now, we're helping along our children today, and we're also helping along the futures of our communities.
Margaret, I love the way you do your work with so much joy. I mean, you come into our planning sessions and you really light up the room, and I can tell you love what you do. You lift up and inspire the people around you. So, thanks for being a part of the Woldumar community for many, many, many years now, and I'm looking forward to doing this for many, many more.
Wonderful.
Thanks
Thank
for being
you
here
so
today.
much.